Hey yo, what is up? Two tanks entered super test today, and it is the Chinese heavy tanks, one in the tier 7 and the other in the tier 8. Of course, both tanks are entering super test. This is an indication that these tanks are going to be 2023 Tech Tree tanks, and this is very interesting development because they are rushing it out early in December. This means you're talking about sometime during Christmas or just in the new year, you're going to see these tanks appear in the live server. Now you're looking at the tier 7 BZ-58, and in this configuration that you are looking at, it is actually rocking the 85mm gun. There's going to be two guns on the tier 7 tank, an 85mm and a 100mm gun. I'm going to show you both the guns and we will take a look at the second gun a little bit later. And this stat you are seeing here is actually on the 85mm gun because it does 220 damage with 165 penetration on the standard shells, and the APCR 220mm of penetration. So that was the gun for the 85, the stat for the 85mm gun. You can see here there is a 100mm gun option as well. We will talk a little bit about this soon. And again, this is a Tech Tree tier 7 heavy tank on the Chinese Tech Tree. Of course, this tank comes with turbo boosters as well, or the rocket boosters. 1250 hit points with 700 horsepower, 1750 horsepower when the rocket boosters are on. Now, if you are familiar at all with any of the rocket boosters mechanics that you've seen so far on the tier 8 premium BZ-166, you will know that the rocket boosters did not add much additional speed to the tank itself. I mean, you can see the difference when the boosters are turned on. You can see that there is a boost, you can see there is a speed difference, but it is not going to make the BZ-176 suddenly transform into a light tank. That's not going to happen because it takes some time for the tank to pick up speed to get into that top speed. So don't expect too too much mobility or agility difference when the rocket boosters are deployed. Again, this is the tier 7, 700 horsepower with 1750 horsepower when the boosters are turned on. The power to weight ratio 13.58. Very heavy, very slow moving tank in stock configuration with the boosters on. 33.94 power to weight ratio. The top speed as well, 35 kilometers an hour going forward, 12 in reverse with the boosters on, 53 going forward and 1 in reverse. This tank has 3 boosters, and every time you turn on the boosters, the duration is 10 seconds long. After the 10 seconds, it takes 5 seconds to cool down before you can use the second booster. The traverse speed on this tank 27.12 degrees. In the pictures you see right now is the second option gun, which is the 100mm gun. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's talk a little bit about the armor first. 70mm of hull armor frontally, and on the side at the back is 50mm thickness, but it is slightly sloped in the front. This is a pretty sexy tank. There's a lot of angles on the tank, so it's going to be bouncy armor. Frontal turret armor 220mm on the front, 90 on the side, 60 at the back. This is a huge turret, huge profile on the side, so it's going to be a really huge target in terms of armor protection from the side. If you take a look at this tank, it is a huge Huge profile. This tank is going to be difficult for you to miss. Now the gun itself, everyone's going to go for the top gun, the 100mm 320 alpha damage and 195 penetration. Unfortunately, very low penetration on the standard shells. Here is the side profile of the tank, a huge profile. You are not going to miss this tank if you get this. If you get to shoot this tank on the side. That is the only biggest concern that I have about this tank. Huge profile, easy to hit. But we're going to talk about the 100mm gun, 320 alpha damage in tier 7. It is pretty devastating. The premium shells is going to be APCRs with 240 penetration, 320 alpha. The reload time 10 seconds, that's pretty good. 10 seconds for 320 alpha. This is like almost tier 8 medium tank territory. Very good reload time, very good damage output. The dispersion, however, 0.4 dispersion, and the aim time 2.59 seconds. This thing is also a hull down monster. 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of elevation. Now I don't want to talk so much about the 85mm gun because a lot of people are just going to go for the 100mm gun, because the 85mm gun only gives you 220 damage, 165 stock penetration, 220 premium penetration. Not that great. However, the reload time is pretty quick, 6.71 seconds. If you want to play this like a medium gun tank, it is pretty quick firing, but only 220 alpha. The aim as well is pretty good, 0.35 dispersion on the 85mm gun. So some people might want to play this as a mobile heavy tank with fast firing gun. It is a possibility, but there we go. This is the tier 7 BZ-58. Let's move on to the next tank, which is going to be the BZ-166. This is the tier 8 Tech 3 heavy tank with the rocket boosters. Now this tank is unlike the premium counterpart. This does not have 650 alpha. This does not have 850 alpha. This has only 420 alpha with 221 penetration, which is pretty good, and 270 penetration on the premium heat shells. There is only one gun option on the Tech 3 BZ-166, which is kind of weird. I was expecting it, Tech 3 tanks, you normally have two gun choices, but we don't, not in the tier 8 Chinese heavy tank. 1550 hit points on this tank. Just like the tier 7, it only has 700 horsepower and 1750 horsepower with the rocket boosters on. It has 13.21 power to weight ratio, almost exactly like the tier 7 tank, which makes this a very slow, heavy moving tank. But when you have the boosters on, it is 33 power to weight ratio. Really fast tank with 53 kilometers an hour going forward when you have the boosters on, 35 when you don't. In the tier 8 configuration, you have 4 boosters instead of 3 boosters in tier 7. Same duration, 10 seconds of boosting time, 5 seconds of cooldown time. The tank traverse 29.20 degrees. Again, this is not an agile tank. It is a heavy, slow tank, but you do get a lot of sloped armor in this tank. So you're gonna get 140 hull armor, which is highly sloped. You can see the top of the hull armor. It's going to be pretty hard to penetrate because of that sloping. It's just going to bounce a lot of the time. The front of the turret as well, 300 millimeters of thickness with all kinds of angles here. I don't know if the top of the turret is going to be a weak spot, just like the BZ-166 tier 8 premium version, but if it is, that means this rooftop is going to be some kind of a weak spot as well, if it follows in the same vein as the BZ-176. The gun is a 122mm 420 damage, 221 penetration on the standard shells, which is, let's take a look at the standard shells, which is AP shells, and the premium shells are going to be heat shells, which are going to deliver 270 penetration 420 alpha. Now the stock shells itself doing 420 alpha with 221 penetration is already pretty good. However, this tank reloads in almost 13 seconds. You can get it down to about 10 and a half seconds with a BIA, with food and all that. But yeah, about 10 and a half, 11 seconds, pretty slow loading time, 2.88. Aim time with 10 degrees of gun depression, just like the premium version. Hull down monster. The only concern I have right now is the turret, the top of the turret, or the roof of the tank. Is that going to be some kind of weak spot here? Because you can see it is going to be very frontally sloped, the top of the turret, which means at eye level you can pretty much hit this top of the turret pretty easily in most tanks. So I think this could be make or break, this could be game breaking. Whether you're gonna grind out this tank or not is gonna really depend on how good this roof armor is going to hold up. But there you go, this is the tier 8 BZ-166 heavy tank that is in the super test now, and looks like it's going to be released sometime over Christmas or in 2023. New year, new line Chinese heavy tanks. I hope you enjoyed this video and took some useful information out of it, and I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.